We didn't get a pithy saying before the last episode. Welcome to Still Untitled, the Adam Savage Project. I'm Will.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Norm.
I'm Will Smith.
I'm Adam Savage.
You guys are silly.
I'm Adam Whitney Savage.
Really?
Yes.
Named after Eli Whitney, the inventor of the cotton gin?
Negative. My father's first name was Whitney. His full name was Whitney Lee Savage, and he went by Lee.
Middle name people are the best people.
People who
go by their middle names.
Will goes by his middle name.
I do go by my middle name.
Oh, you do? What is your first name, Aloysius?
Verlin.
Verlin?
Yeah, I have a Southern lawyer name. I'm Verlin William Smith III. So if I was a Southern lawyer, it would be the offices of V. William Smith III.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Esquire.
That was always the family joke, because my family thought my father was insane when he wanted to name me a third.
A third.
He is correct.
I wanted to name both of my kids George Foreman.
I think that would have been amazing. the seventh and eighth.
Yeah, exactly. It's good enough for George.
It's the naming a kid thing. I think we've talked about this before, but it was intense.
Oh,
like there's a lot of pressure to not stick a kid with a bad name. Like you don't want to
pronounced Azwipe.
And then Key and Peele bit about names.
What's that?
Names in schools. Key and Peele.
Oh yeah. Jay Quellen.
Yes.
Yes.
The inner city substitute teacher is brilliant.
Yes. Everything they do is brilliant.
Aaron. Yeah.
Those episodes are packed.
I met Key last year at Sketchfest.
Oh, cool.
Was it last year that Hodgman came out? Maybe it was the previous year. I can't remember.
Hodgman was here last year.
Did Hodgman get interviewed by Paul F. Tompkins on stage this year? This most recent year? I think that was actually a year and a half ago now.
I think that was the first year we knew you. Yeah.
Anyway, names. Yes. My baby mama, my ex-wife, the mother of my children, and we bypassed the whole discussion thing. We were both on the exact same page. We don't want any opinions from anybody.
No, that's the right answer.
Yeah. We didn't want to, this was not, and the problem is most people don't know that you don't want their opinion about your baby's name.
Like, I don't want your opinion about my dog's name, much less the baby's name. The thing about once you come up with the decision, once you pick out the names, you gotta go on lockdown.
Yep,
that's because exactly you don't want negative feedback at that point. You can have no hesitation.
We found out early it was twins. Then we found out they were both boys, and we had one girl's name picked out and two boys' names picked out.
Okay.
And right. So I don't generally say my kids' names on air, so I won't this time. Wow, that discussion ends up becoming pretty short.
Hit a wall.
One son is named after a famous 1940s film character, and the other is named after Sam Neill's first major television role in the 80s.
That's you gave it away.
Still pretty.
There was an internet, Adam.
Well, I mean, but it's the whole names are important things. I can't remember. That's a quote from a movie. Names are powerful things. It's like Dune or something,
meaning. Right? It's what one of the protesters yells at Noam Chomsky in the movie, The Manufacturing Consent, which is a terrific documentary.
That's not what I was thinking about. No. But I'm sure it is.
Oh, yeah. It's a linguist. You are a linguist. Language has meaning.
Is it an adaptation, perchance?
Mm-mm.
No?
Mm-mm. Nice segue, though, because I like adaptations. Why do you ask?
I think we all like adaptations. We got a letter, which I lost when my mail program crashed, but I'm going to read it here in a moment if I find it. And if not, I'm just going to say it was from Joseph Swick. That's it. He says, "Hey, Adam, Will, and Norm, the recent spoiler cast for Edge of Tomorrow / All You Need Is Kill got me wondering what movies based on books, including comic books, you felt were better than the original source material rather than just good enough or reasonably close. I'd be willing to bet that Blade Runner is probably on that list for Adam, but I'm curious as to what other movie adaptations rank highly."
Well, Blade Runner is on that list. I love Philip K. Dick for his ideas, not as much for his actual writing.
I'd say almost all of the stuff based on Philip K. Dick short stories, the ideas are great.
Yep.
And the writing, the actual, like, he wasn't very good at dialogue.
No. But also Blade Runner, that is apples and oranges, because Blade Runner the movie is a very different movie and is looking at a very different
Which Blade Runner?
Cultural commentary.
The one with the voiceover?
Any of the cuts
Okay.
are I think they're looking at, I mean, I know that Philip K. Dick and Ridley Scott fought bitterly throughout the course about what the point of the movie was. And Philip K. Dick did not like the idea, if I remember correctly, that Harrison Ford is a replicant. But it's a central thesis. It's a central theme of Blade Runner and the thing that gives the film all of its meaning. So to me, they're just totally different. They have some superficial comparators, but they're not the same material.
And like there's two kind of different kinds of adaptations too. Like that adaptation is just, here is the core concept.
Right.
There are robots. It's the future.
Yep.
Things are bad. Life is precious.
Right.
Move on.
So I will say, I've said this before, that I think there are two kinds of people in the world: Hammett people and Chandler people. Dashiell Hammett, detective fiction writer, who basically reinvented the genre in the 30s, and Raymond Chandler, who took it and made it a mature and genuine literary form. I think that's my opinion. Your results may vary. Hammett has been adapted umpteen times, probably most famously The Maltese Falcon, which is, if you've got an afternoon of 5 or 6 hours, you can read the entire book, The Maltese Falcon, in about 2.5, 3 hours.
It's like 180 pages,
and
right?
then watch the movie. And they are fantastic. They are such a pair. They are really just joined together, and a beautiful sort of equation of a fantastic translation from one medium to another where almost nothing's lost. And much is gained.
And then you have adaptations like Dune.
Yeah, Dune. Dune went through so many. In fact, the first attempt to bring Dune to the screen is one of the reasons that we have Alien.
Yeah.
And there's a documentary about this. It's been on my list of things to watch for the last couple of weeks.
So Chandler is, on the other hand, his books also adapted.
It has. I was going to bring up the other. So there is another movie where I consider. It's a Hammett adaptation where I think the movie is so much better than the source material, and it's one of my favorite Coen Brothers movies, Miller's Crossing.
Oh, Miller's Crossing. I didn't know it was based on a book, but it's wonderful.
Well, it's based on The Glass Key by Dashiell Hammett, and it's again, there are a lot of differences, but whatever is interesting about The Glass Key is in Miller's Crossing and a lot more. And it's a beautiful. I mean, I just love Miller's Crossing. I love that dialogue. I think that's just a perfect movie.
It happens. It seems to happen all the time in Hollywood that good ideas come out of either books, comic books, short stories, short films, and then they are adapted for big screen, and the studios buy the rights. And there is no pretense, they can say to tell the narrative of the production that it was taken from the source, but it is really the screenwriter and director's work. On the other hand,
totally different.
Right, and they're totally different, and that's great. And people will bitch about it, but that's fine. On the other hand, there's also a rising trend, and especially with comic book movies, where the production, including the director and the producers, take special pride in how close or how much they revere and honor the source material in the adaptation, especially with comic books.
Case in point, I'd say Harry Potter books are incredibly
Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter's, and this is where the fan base and the people who they want to get to go on the first day and have a special connection to the material. And it happens, with Twilight and all that stuff. I'm not a screenwriter, and I knew I wasn't a screenwriter because I can read a book and everyone has read a book and imagine how it would be on screen. You think you're a director. I know exactly how this scene would play out. But when you watch a movie and you see how they twist the words around and how they shorten scenes, that is the craft.
The cuts are the heart. Like if you look at what came out of those Harry Potter books to make a movie that feels exactly like those Harry Potter books made me feel, the Harry Potter books were probably the first adaptation I read, because I love the Lord of the Rings movies as movies. I don't think they're particularly good adaptations of the things that I liked about the Lord of the Rings books when I was 15. I also watched them when I was 30.
You wanted more songs.
More songs, yeah. And where the fuck was Tom Bombadil, man? That Peter Jackson is an asshole. No, but those Harry Potter books and the movies, like those movies I watched after I read most of the books, and they looked like I imagined that world because of the descriptions that Joe Rowling wrote in the books. Like they were incredibly faithful and really, really good. I also really like the Watchmen movie, which I know is controversial amongst comic book fans, but
it's controversial because Moore hates it.
Moore hates everything, though. That doesn't narrow it.
And that's from the perspective. The direction was a fan.
Yeah,
right. A fan adaptation, a big budget, $100 million fan adaptation.
Well, and a dramatically different ending.
Also, it is a dramatically different ending.
I think better.
Look, one of the things that I think often gets lost is that it's really the amount of material that happens in a full-length novel is a ton more than happens in your full-length movie.
Yeah.
And so the short story is almost the perfect form to adapt to a feature-length film. I mean, there's a reason the Harry Potter movies are all running close to 3 hours
Or
long.
2 movies.
And cover tremendous amounts of material.
And they still cut an unbelievable amount of stuff. Like there is a ton of Harry Potter that you never saw.
Right.
Well, they're about to do a new set of movies.
Really?
Yeah, based on the bestiary and the creatures from the world.
A lot more money be made.
Really?
Yeah.
It also depends on the writer too, and how they if they're writing
feel about that, Will?
I don't feel good.
Sorry.
if they're writing more descriptively and doing the production design in the book as opposed to it being over a span of several weeks or years in a book, then it makes it a little different how you adapt it. But I think we can all agree, it's difficult to read a book and then go into a movie without preconceptions.
It is.
And to distance yourself.
What gets me excited about what's happening with television now, where even more than we have this golden age of 7 seasons of The Sopranos and Breaking Bad, etc., but it's also these short run seasons, like 10-episode runs of American Horror Story and True Detectives, where all of a sudden that is potentially the ultimate playing ground for an adaptation of a novel in a way that it really can breathe.
Well, and
Fargo and yeah.
Well, and there are huge adaptations. Like there's a Pat Rothfuss's Kingkiller Chronicles. Chronicle. Anyway, those books are wonderful, wonderful fantasy books. They are written like his prose is good for good fiction, not good for genre fiction. He's a wonderful, wonderful writer.
Yeah.
He's very kind of has a twisted perspective on things that I find delightful. And they're making a series in the Game of Thrones style of those books.
That's great.
Which is the perfect place to explore this sprawling story of a young man who's coming of age.
And you mentioned Game of Thrones. That is a perfect example of an adaptation now being fleshed out into many seasons and books. And that is, there are stories dedicated to what's different from the books and the TV show. And it is the craft of adaptation.
And I will tell you, I will tell you, I do have a favorite adaptation.
Okay.
Which is the original 6-hour BBC adaptation of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, starring Jennifer Ely and Colin Firth.
Wow.
And
is this pre-CAD Colin Firth? Like before he became a CAD?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
This is the role that defined him. And in fact, it's the reason he plays Mr. Darcy in Bridget Jones' Diary, because it's the same character, effectively.
Yeah.
Modernized. But the BBC version of that film is so great. I can't recommend it enough. I've actually sat through it twice. And it's worth it. It's Jennifer Ely, who you might remember playing one of the scientists from Contagion, Steven Soderbergh's film. She plays the scientist in the lab wearing the biohazard suit. She's an incredible actress, and she's beautiful and also clearly really brilliant. And that comes across in her portrayal of the lead in Pride and Prejudice.
What do you think makes a good adaptation? Like you look at things like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which should be a slam dunk adaptation,
right?
But then when you actually look at it, a lot of the stuff that makes Hitchhiker's Guide clever and smart are kind of written gags that may not translate to film.
So I think that there's a respect for understanding what can and can't translate to film, but I don't think there's anything special about adaptations that make them more or less difficult to make than movies, because I mean, from what I know of the directors that I know and the process of movie making, I know you can do all the right things and end up with a terrible movie, and you can do all the wrong things and end up with an amazing movie. Francis Ford Coppola thought he was going to be fired every day on The Godfather, and he was under 30. He was working under the most egregiously terrible conditions and made one of the greatest movies in cinema, right? You never have any idea when you put all the elements in and shake them, what you're going to come out with. So, I feel like there's always people going to be unhappy. There are always going to be people unhappy with an adaptation because it didn't follow the source material, or it took things in a different direction, or it didn't think that the main point that they liked was actually the point that the film decided.
Reading
was
is
the main
subjective.
point.
I mean, some of the Chandler adaptations basically just took the character and dropped him in a whole different thing, right? Yeah.
And actually, and very specifically speaking of Chandler, I don't feel like his hero, Philip Marlowe, has truly been represented on film. Like,
you know, Elliot Gould captures.
actually, I will tell you that Elliot Gould gets closer than almost anybody else.
Yeah.
This is Robert Altman's The Long Goodbye, which is it's the Chandler. Chandler only wrote 7 novels, and he didn't start till he was 43. So he's a wonderful.
Still hope for all of us. Well,
still hope for all of us. Morgan Freeman's first movie when he was 50.
there you go.
So The Long Goodbye. Sorry, The Long Goodbye is Chandler's
Freeman's
last
first-
novel written. What's
His
that?
first car commercial wasn't
sorry.
until he was 62.
Morgan Freeman's first movie when he was 50.
Yeah, his first big breakthrough movie, which was Street Smart with Christopher Reeve. Morgan Freeman was 50 years old.
No, how old was he in like Robin Hood?
Oh,
He was
much older
older than 60. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Blew your mind.
I'm sorry.
Hey, I just found out.
That Robin Hood adaptation.
I just found out that the actor that plays the preacher on Serenity was also Sergeant Dietrich from Barney Miller.
What's Barney Miller?
Barney Miller was it? Do you really
I
ask?
know what Barney Miller is. You might have to tell Norm though.
But wait. Where was I going? Oh,
Chandler.
Marlowe.
Chandler, yeah.
So Marlowe, Chandler's hero. There's a lot of Chandler in the movie Chinatown, and Robert Towne, who wrote it, was absolutely totally channeling Hammett and Chandler. But his hero, Jake Gittes, is way too tarnished to be Marlowe. Marlowe is more like, if I had to cast an actor right now to be the perfect Marlowe, it would be Clive Owen. He can totally display the amount of warmth and coldness all in relation to
Sin
each
City
other.
is the character he plays in Sin City is Marlowe, right? But maybe a little more violent and a little less thinky, but
Yeah, indeed.
very Marlowe-esque. One of the things like I think a lot of times people get upset about adaptations because they change plot points or they change the small details without I think the mark of a really great adaptation is something that captures the essence of what makes the original source material great, not necessarily that at the end this guy ends up with this girl and the bad guy dies by falling off of the edge of a cliff.
Right.
And I'm of course blanking on any kind of example of something.
So we
like
could
this,
also
but-
talk about adaptations of a different sort, which is, for instance, like Kurosawa paying homage to the American Western and then getting copied by Sergio Leone,
Yeah.
and then Sam Peckinpah, to all of that sort of movement across. And when we get to that zone, we get to my favorite awful adaptation, which is the remake of Wim Wenders' Angels, City. Sorry,
Angel, not the movie from Home Alone.
what is? Oh my God, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on this. Wim Wenders' film about angels in East Berlin. It's called Wings of Desire.
Oh, okay.
Which was, I got it mixed up because the adaptation is called City of Angels and stars
Al Pacino,
Nicolas
and
Cage
Nicolas
and
Cage.
Meg Ryan.
Yes, we talked about
And
this.
wait, this is the best part. This will sound like a Hollywood pitch meeting joke, but it's not. In the Wim Wenders film Wings of Desire, which is, by the way, fully to be recommended and totally amazing. It's about a ghost who wanders through Berlin and falls in love with this woman who's alive. She can't see him, and he just sort of follows her around.
So he's a creeper.
and pines after her. It's very sweet and strange.
Okay.
But she's a circus performer. She's got long blonde curly hair, and she's a circus
Of
performer.
course. As
In the
people are.
American adaptation, she's a famous brain surgeon.
Well, it's Meg Ryan.
It's like, are you kidding me? From circus performer to famous brain surgeon?
Okay, so but let's break this down. What's wrong with circus performer? Because if the character is it that changes the fundamental behavior
It's-
of the character?
it speaks to this level of the audience wouldn't care unless we make her a world class at something impossible.
Does she have to be super smart? Is that what it is? She
It
has to
turns her into a superhero.
Yeah.
Because how many people are famous brain surgeons?
Like 6, probably.
Right. I mean, so, and that one of them looks like Meg Ryan.
I can buy that.
That is,
I'm sure,
that is a Hollywood.
absolutely. I'm sure there are
conceit. Yes.
thousands of super attractive doctors all over the place.
Now-
what I'm saying is a classic Hollywood sort of like,
Yeah.
we wouldn't buy it unless.
Is that the adaptation that you were most disappointed by because the source material was the one that resonated most with you and they twisted that up?
Disappointed isn't I knew that it wasn't going to be that great. Like Point of No Return, the adaptation
that's so bad.
of Femme Nikita.
It is. But that's one that they actually kind of took, like they lifted scenes from, like the diving down the laundry chute or the dumbwaiter or whatever it is.
There's a lot of shot for
all
shot
of that stuff is shot for shot.
Yeah.
And it's awesome in the French movie and terrible in the Bridget Fonda movie.
And there's actually a terrific bit in the French movie where spoiler alert. In the French film, it's about a junkie who basically gets captured by the police and turned into an assassin, right? And they basically erase her and rebuild her. And her handler is this guy in the French movie. He's a famous French actor whose name escapes me right now. And there's a shift in Femme Nikita where she all of a sudden she has no power. I mean, that's sort of like what her character's about. She has no power, and then she has power. There's this turning of the hourglass. And there's a point at which she kisses her handler. And it's this totally amazing moment in the French movie. It makes no sense whatsoever in the American film. Like, they just put that in, and they're like, we didn't think about what this means.
They did it here, so we got to do it here.
Exactly.
Now you're talking about remakes, though. And that's a little different when there's cinematic source.
You're right.
Versus literary source.
I was just getting excited about adaptations.
I mean, if we're talking about
good
cinematic remakes, Italian Job, I think, is the most is the worst one.
No, Gone in 60 Seconds, man. Gone in 60 Seconds is a terrible movie.
Both car movies. But
does Star Trek, does J.J. Abrams' Star Trek count as an adaptation? Or because it takes...
I think that's a spiritual remake.
You think it's a remake?
Remake slash reboot.
But the original Star Trek books.
No.
So what is the what is the
They weren't even written by Alan Dean Foster.
What is the literary the book that was turned into the movie that was the worst?
Okay.
Dune has to be up there. They missed all of
you
the
resonated with you the most.
I loved the book Dune.
And that was one you were so disappointed by with the movie.
Oh, wow. I'm going to have to think about this. I haven't thought ahead about this one.
I will. I have the Positronic Man Asimov, which turned into Robin Williams Bicentennial Man.
Didn't you work on Bicentennial Man, Adam?
I did work on Bicentennial Man. I built many of the hand props from that film. Robin was a delight to work with.
I don't begrudge you for it.
There's actually, as a side story, there comes a time if you're working on a Robin Williams movie, Robin is one of the most gregarious, sweet, generous humans you've ever met. And he will he'll talk to you about anything. But more than that, give him the slightest little push and he's just going to start riffing right in front of you. And you'll have this moment where you think, holy cow, I'm at the craft services table with a donut in my hand and Robin Williams is giving me a private comedy concert right now of some of the funniest shit I've ever heard. And it's totally amazing. And by the way, he's dressed as a robot, which makes it even cooler. So when I was on Bicentennial Man, there was this one point where we're getting bagels and there was this big report about how a cocaine smuggling boat had foundered off the coast of Florida and it had like 2 tons of cocaine on it. And Robin started to do imitations of all the people showing up from around the country to help with the cleanup.
Wow.
Right? He starts to characterize multiple personality types who are showing up to help. And this leads to an unbelievable impression of a coked up dolphin, which is just amazing. And then there comes this point where after it's been going on for like 25 minutes, because they haven't called him back on set, that you realize that your boss is waiting for you back in the shop and that actually you might get in trouble and you find yourself saying something that you never imagined in your whole life you would say. And I'm literally talking about myself in the second person.
Yeah.
I said, Robin, I have to go back to work now.
And then you have a sad, hairy man.
I mean,
Just as a robot.
really, that part of the film was great. My supervisor on that film was a terrible, terrible supervisor, and it was not a fun job for any of the modeling crew. We were working under weird time constrictions, and it was a strange film.
Strange film was right.
Straight, yes.
Yeah.
Wait, but was Wasn't that also partly iRobot? Or no, it was
No, it's the same
Positronic
universe.
Man.
Yeah, it's the same universe. as
Okay.
iRobot.
I got to give iRobot as my least favorite adaptation.
That is a pretty shitty
It works on a couple of different levels if you think about it for a minute. But that's one where they took the core concept and just made a whole movie around that. But what they really wanted to make was a robot revolution. They wanted to make Planet of the Apes, but for robots.
Right.
And,
Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, you don't like Silence of the
Absolutely.
Lambs?
No, I'd say Silence of the Lambs is an amazing and much better. I'm going back to that's better, even better than its source material. Thomas Harris's novels, Red Dragon, Silence of the Lambs, both terrific. And I actually had read them both before the movies came out.
Oh, really?
Because I read a lot of weird stuff when I was a kid.
That Red Dragon movie was pretty good too.
I never saw that one.
Not the Manhunter. Okay.
Manhunter is the original William Peterson version of Red Dragon, which is weird and terrible. Although Brian Cox was the first actor to play Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah.
In Manhunter.
And he's terrific.
Yes.
Wasn't available for Silence of the Lambs, so I'm told.
Oops. Yeah, the adaptations. What about comic adaptations? There's like
300.
Oh, I'll tell you an
300's really
abysmal comic adaptation. Elektra.
Oh yeah,
I don't think I ever saw that.
That might have been the first comic book movie that came out when I was
It's
alive. That's
really, I mean, and Elektra Assassin. So Elektra is a character, a girlfriend of Daredevil's, who shows up in the Daredevil comic books.
And to call her a girlfriend of Daredevil's is her character.
Not the typical Marvel girlfriend.
She is one of the most badass of badass comic book characters. And Frank Miller, when he had the power to do whatever he wanted, which is great for the world because he should be able to do whatever he wants, even though he's a Republican nut job. When Frank Miller got power, he was working with all of his favorite illustrators, and he did this unbelievable version of a separate graphic novel of Elektra in 8 issues with the amazing illustrator Bill Sienkiewicz, which was one of the first graphic novels that got me into comic books as a high art form, not even a pretender to it. It is an amazing set. Read it. It's wonderful. Her character speaks 2 words in the entire graphic novel.
Wow.
Oh, wait. 3 words. She speaks 3 words in one scene, and it's mind-blowingly great. And my best friend and I spent years casting Elektra. And then they made this terrible movie with Jennifer Garner, who tried, but
she should have, like, you watch Alias.
Yeah,
this is post
she's a
Alias.
terrific actress.
She's great.
Absolutely.
But she
I
got
totally
that,
love her.
And it was a spinoff of Daredevil.
Mhm.
It was because they had that character in Daredevil.
right.
Yes.
And then they made
Yeah, and Daredevil was another one that was terrible. I mean, it just was. Daredevil's a great character. I love Daredevil. I mean, yeah, I love Daredevil.
Frank Miller writing Daredevil. Great.
Yeah.
John Romita.
Yeah, and there is a compendium of all of Miller's Daredevils in a couple of graphic novels, and they're great. But the Elektra's
What about
very.
What about Jackie Brown?
Jackie Brown?
It's an Elmore Leonard novel,
Jackie
right?
Brown is an interesting one because it doesn't follow the source material slavishly whatsoever.
Right.
In fact, it's more of an in spirit of Elmore Leonard adaptation than a direct copy of Rum Punch, which is the original novel. But if I said this before, if you haven't read Elmore Leonard, just grab an Elmore Leonard and read it because they're all amazing.
Yeah.
And Elmore Leonard has written a million books that got made into great movies, starting, 52 Pickup with Roy Scheider and Margaret, and then Get Shorty and Be Cool, which is but
Get Shorty's great.
Shorty's amazing. Jackie Brown's amazing. Out of Sight is based
That's
on an
the
Elmore Leonard novel. That's J-Lo, George Clooney.
That was the first movie I saw with George Clooney. I was like, wow, that guy can act. And I was like, she can act too.
She can totally act.
Yeah.
She's fantastic.
Even Soderbergh.
It is so good.
Out of Sight is amazing.
Yeah.
Out of Sight is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, it's really good.
And all of these movies adapted from Elmore Leonard novels. So his great thing as a writer is character and dialogue. And yeah, I don't even remember almost any of his plots, but I remember his characters. And actually, one of my favorite characters of his, Raylan Givens, is the main character of Justified, the TV show based on Elmore Leonard's novels, starring Raylan Givens. I think he wrote 3 novels with Raylan.
Well, his characters have cadence. Like their voices have a kind of boom, boom, boom.
Nobody writes better dialogue.
Boom.
Nobody writes better dialogue. And even with missing words and a patois of like criminal underclass and all of that. I mean, Elmore Leonard is he's R.I.P. I'm sad that he passed away this year. One of the great voices of American speech. Totally. And really frequently gets made into terrific adaptations. There's a really abysmal one, which is called The Big Bounce, starring Luke Wilson and Morgan Freeman.
Oh my goodness.
Oh.
And it is so bad. I mean, it's so bad. It's insultingly bad. It doesn't make any sense at all. And Elmer Leonard even said, that is a terrible adaptation from my book.
Don't watch this one. I think that's.
I think we covered.
We covered it, and also just barely scratched the surface.
Yeah, we did. There's no way to do an in-depth. I mean, this would be like a 40-part podcast to go into deep. But I think we've covered. Thank you for the comic and the Elmore Leonard tip, because those are fertile grounds for adaptation.
Yeah, well, and then there's also like the meta adaptation, like Adaptation, which is a movie about adapting and you can go down deep holes. We'll be back next week with another episode.
We will.
Untitled. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, if you have feedback, YouTube, iTunes,
we love your
comments,
feedback.
reviews, likes, all of that stuff. We're down with it. So
we are.
Thank you all for watching, and see you next week.
Bye.